Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so very much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new to this channel is dedicated to the life and teachings of a very special human being named Bruno Groening. You can learn more about him on the website I've created. The links are to the side or below. A warm welcome back to anyone who knows about Bruno Groening or anyone who frequently drops by this channel. And first and foremost, I'd just like to take a moment and say a prayer to our source. Offer gratitude, thanksgiving to the supreme mystery, that which gave us life and created all of this. And I would like to ask for the help from my dear friend Bruno Groening, my dear friend Jesus Christ, to guide and bless this gathering. So I have a few thoughts I'd like to share, but before I share those, I'd like to share a very important thought. Maybe the most important thought. I won't say the most, but please don't believe anything I say blindly. Please find out for yourself what is true. Bruno Groening said, "You have a duty to convince yourself of the truth." When I first heard that, I was like, what does that mean? So Bruno's teachings are so simple that it's sometimes almost easy to dismiss them. I'm like, what does he mean you have a duty to convince? What does he mean I have to convince myself of the truth? Well, what I've come to understand is that what he meant is we have a duty to not follow other people, but to come to know in our direct experience from deep within the inside what's true and what's not true. This sounds very simple. It sounds easy, but in my experience, it hasn't been easy because I have quite the habit of listening to other people, listening to spiritual books, spiritual leaders, to follow them. But Bruno Groening taught that it's important that we learn how to follow God and to listen from the inside out, meaning when someone says something or shares something, we listen on the inside to say, oh, yes, I believe that's true, or no, that's not true, or oh, I think that's partially true. As opposed to someone shares an idea and we just, oh, yes, that's true, and blindly follow that. That's the exact opposite of what Bruno Groening, of the path, and not just a path, but a way of living that Bruno Groening called us to. So many people turn, and will turn to Bruno Groening for healing. I was one of them. As I've shared many times, my body and my life was a disaster. I didn't know, I was literally slowly dying. I did not know how much longer I had. I was losing my eyesight. My heart had intense palpitations. I was tired all the time. Chronic tension from head to toe. Chronic sore throats. I was constantly fighting off colds. And I was just headed downhill. And I found this path. I became very devoted. At first I was skeptical, but then after my first healing, I became very devoted, and all of those things healed. I literally had my life saved and I got my life back. So I was like, wow, Bruno Groening is quite the healer, and he is. But he said that physical healings are only 10% of what his work is about. Forever loving everything. Seeing you here brings a smile. Long time no. Warm welcome. So that's a very strong statement. Physical healings are only 10% of my work. So sadly, in my view, sadly or not, I mean, all in my view, all things serve the good. And still, sadly, Bruno Groening gets presented as just a healer, like that it's all about physical health. It's all about physical healing. And those things are so important. And Bruno himself pointed out, rightly so, that if you don't have your health, it's kind of hard to do life, right? However, if it's only 10%, what's that other 90% all about? And so that's a big part of what this channel has been about, is me unpacking that, having to discover for myself, because nobody taught me really about the 90%. The way I was taught about Bruno Groening's work, it was all about healing, 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 healing. That's not to downplay how important physical healing is. It's amazing. In fact, I remember reading, I think it was Greta Hausler who said, just Bruno was always so happy when a healing occurred. So that's not to downplay or say they're worthless or meaningless, not at all. I'm alive today because of Bruno's teachings on healing and Bruno's capacity to help and facilitate physical healing. And I learned the hard way what he meant by the 90, that physical healings are only 10%. Because, so I had all these healings. Like I went from like a kind of a broken person to like this healthy, vibrant, alive human being. Like I just became a different person over a period of about maybe 4 or 5 months. Complete rebirth. My life was saved. I believed in God. I'd been an agnostic my whole life. I had boundless energy. But no one ever taught me about the 90%. Because I just thought it was all about healing, and being happy. So what I've come to realize is a big part of that 90% that doesn't get focused on enough, in my view, is understanding the state of the world, understanding what it is to be a human being. And so what I'm about to share is pretty intense, so please fasten your seatbelts. I believe it's an accurate representation of Bruno's teachings, but you have to study and find out for yourself. What it is to be a human being in a body on this planet right now is to be at war. We are at war, or maybe better said, evil is at war with us. Bruno Groening said that the evil will constantly try and pull human beings off the good path. Now, that's a very strong statement. Let's think about that for a moment. The evil will constantly try to pull the human being off the good path. Constantly. And I don't have it quite memorized, but Bruno Groening said no matter how devout the human being is, and no matter how much they pray, P-R-A-Y, pray, do spiritual practice, that they're not strong enough to overcome evil on their own. No matter how devout. Now that, I think maybe for the highest saint, maybe that's not true, but I'm certainly not the highest, most holy saint. For 99.99% of the human race, what Bruno Groening is saying, no matter how hard you try, you cannot overcome evil on your own. And he also said, evil has become so predominant in this world that human beings can barely live anymore. Now that's hard to fathom because look at our technology, right? Like here I am on a computer, like I'm in my room, people are spread all throughout the world who can, you know, there are a couple people who are live right now. People can watch the video afterwards. It seems like, wow, we've got this great life. And on one level, some of us do. But on another level, according to Bruno Groening, the state of the world is so bad that we're barely able to live. And he said that back in the 1950s, right? 60 years later, I would argue that the evil's just gotten stronger. Greta Hausler agreed with that. She's in the year 2000, the turn of the century. She said that the evil in her view had gotten stronger since Bruno Groening had come here. So this is a very intense topic. I sometimes feel uncomfortable talking about it. I don't want to scare people away from Bruno Groening. I don't want to focus too much on evil, but I also I want to make sure that I focus enough, or said another way, that I'm mindful, because Bruno Groening said the human being lives in between two poles, right in the middle between good and evil. You know, there's a cartoon of on someone's facing a difficult decision, and on one shoulder there's an angel, and on one shoulder there's a demon. And it's usually like kind of joking, right? But what if that cartoon actually speaks to the human condition? That moment by moment, there's a tug of war going on. So I said that I found all this out the hard way. Well, after my rebirth, after the miraculous healings, getting my life back, becoming the person I always wanted to be, happy, feeling safe, feeling empowered, full of bliss, inspired, I was sent a snare that I fell for. And in hindsight, all I can say is that evil is not just powerful, it's very intelligent, because I was sent the perfect snare. A very unhealthy relationship. And it's almost like it was exactly designed that it would catch me. Like if there was one key piece that, had that not been there, I wouldn't have fallen for it. But I did. And so this brings us to one of Bruno's statements. He said, Satan is mighty, God is almighty. So it's very easy I'll say easy, it's relatively easy to recognize God is almighty. Like, take a look at this planet Earth, take a look at our solar system, take a look at the galaxy, take a look at the universe. Who can even fathom the amount of energy it would take to create such a thing, much less guide it, much less the wonder of the human body, the complexity. Who can even begin to fathom the wisdom, the intelligence, the power, the creativity? And to simultaneously be mindful that there is this powerful, tricky, and very intelligent force that will constantly try and pull us off the good path. There's on TikTok, there's this trend where someone says, so you think you're struggling with depression? And then that's how it starts. It says, so you think you're struggling with depression? Well, if you are still alive, depression is struggling with you. What does that mean? What it means is depression is trying to kill people, and it succeeds, sadly. Bruno Groening himself said that evil is trying to destroy this earth, to literally tear it apart. That's how insane evil is. And if left unchecked, Well, Bruno Groening said that that would not be permitted to happen. And yet, that's how crazy and powerful evil is. That if the divine force didn't respond, that evil would literally tear this world, this beautiful earth, apart. So that's the opponent we're up against. Very powerful, very intelligent, and very malignant with malice. Bruno Groening used the German word Bosse, which means viciousness, nastiness, evil. The German understanding of evil is very precise. Vicious and nasty. Vicious and nasty. So when I say it's easy to say God is almighty, it's easy because it feels good to acknowledge and recognize. It feels good to me to offer praise, to offer worship. It feels good to worship God, to offer reverence. Just as it feels good to appreciate beauty, it feels good to appreciate the supreme beauty. But it's a little less fun to think about the topics that I'm speaking of. But it's equally as important to hold those two. The almighty power of God, the glory of our Maker, the gift and miracle of life and existence, and that we are at war. That this force, this other force, which is less powerful than God, but on our own, without the divine help, is more powerful than any one of us. So to be mindful of both. It's not easy. I struggle with it every day. Because I think the human tendency is to think in either or I'll say the habit, to focus only on the divine. Like when things are going well, like everything's great. Everything's, gonna be great forever. Or when things are going bad, like, oh, everything is awful. Nothing's ever gonna get better. But to really hold both, in both challenges and in blessings. Michelle wrote, "To me, you have a very deep understanding of Bruno's teachings. Thanks for sharing." Brings tears to my eyes, Michelle. Thank you. So here's how I got my deep understanding. So I started to tell the story of how I was sent this unhealthy relationship and how it was like designed, and it just designed perfectly to get me and then to take me off track. So this person appeared to be a very profound being of light, a very profound healer and wise person. And they ended up to be a complete narcissist. And anyone who knows anything about narcissism is narcissists use people like objects. They just chew them up and leave them and go on to the next person. It's pretty intense. And without understanding what was going on, and it only took about 5 months for this person to just get inside of me. And I let them. I made some choices and I really, I'll say, lost so much of what I had gained. I wish there could have been a video of me during those 6 or 7 periods. I was just like glowing and radiating. And I really lost that. And it was so painful. The loss of that was so painful. That's what led me to really investigate. And I did Einstein. I did so much Einstein to try and get it back. so much tuning in. I gave the burden away over and over and over. And at a certain point, I had to admit that I didn't, yes, I had all these healings. And yes, that was wonderful, but I didn't fully grasp Bruno's teachings. And luckily, I was introduced to a book called Powers of the Spirit. And I am looking for it right now. And I will put a link to it. Hold on one moment. And this book helped me to realize that I didn't know very much about Bruno Groening. I had all these healings. I became a community leader. I was teaching other people, but I was teaching other people only 10%. Maybe in my good moments, 15 or 20% of what Bruno really taught. So it was this paradox that led me to really seek to understand Bruno's teachings of having this profound healing and really spiritual awakening, losing it, going into such pain and suffering over that loss, and then coming to realize how I lost it and why I lost it, and that I had a very shallow understanding of Bruno's teachings and of life itself. So paradoxically, it's a lot of suffering that led me to really, I think, understand Bruno's teachings. And my hope is that I can share these experiences and that other people don't have to go so far down the hole. I went pretty far down the hole. And thanks for saying hi, Michelle. So let's sit with all this for a little bit and let's tune in to the good channel, the divine channel, the channel of harmony, health, yes, healing, also peace and happiness and wisdom. So I'm paraphrasing, but Bruno Groening said to free the soul from evil's clutches. That's what this work is really all about. Almost exact quote. When I read that, I said, oh my, healing is just a very small part of that, of this work. And this ties into what when healings don't happen, why? Well, Bruno said that they haven't reached. It's been a long time since I've read that. He said there's either a lesson to be learned, or the person has not reached the necessary spiritual maturity. So it's Bruno Groening's teaching is not Western medicine, right? Western medicine, you take a pill, you take a shot, that eliminates the problem, right? Hopefully. So taking in Einstein it can just displace the evil. It can just push it right out. But that's a very small part, an important part. But the other part is about growth and learning and coming to understand, like, illness doesn't happen for no reason. It's because something's out of alignment. And so that's where sort of the Western medical model has invaded Bruno Groening's teachings. Like, oh, I'm just going to take in Einstein and that'll just get rid of everything. Well, Western medicine, again, you take a pill or a shot or radiation, and that theoretically stops the illness, but it doesn't address the cause. And so I'm not telling people to not seek healing or to not do lots of Einstein, but that's not the full path. And I learned that the hard way. All right, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for dropping in. Wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful God-guided day. And mindfulness of the almighty power of God. And mindfulness of the might, the trickiness of evil. Take care. Big love.